What our kids need now more than ever is to have their vagus nerve bussin', I think is how teenagers would say it. Bumping, rolling, balling. That's how I grew up, okay? And so we have vagus nerves that are so suppressed, so shut down, so dysfunctional, and then we combine that with a high stress, super toxic, ridiculously crazy social media fed world, and no wonder our kids are so sick. Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. Hey parents, welcome back. Here we are, another episode of the Experience Miracles podcast, and we're going to get quite nerdy with this one. If you've listened to even one previous episode, you're like, that's not a shocker. I get into the science and neurology all the time, but today we're talking about vagus nerve stimulation. Now, if your Instagram game and your TikTok game and your YouTube game are strong, you have likely heard at least something to the tune about the vagus nerve, nervous system stimulation, nervous system dysregulation, and different things. Maybe you've even watched a few TikToks or Instagram videos or some of our own content about vagus nerve stimulation. And maybe you've never heard of the vagus nerve, and you're wondering if I'm talking about Las Vegas, and I'm not. I'm talking about the vagus, V-A-G-U-S, which is a Latin, like most medical terms and anatomical terms. They are coded in old school, Latin, and it means wandering nerve. I'm going to get in all about this important, ridiculously important nerve. So whether you've heard a ton about it, trust me, the stuff you've heard about the vagus nerve, if you do know about it, it's not enough. Vagus nerve stimulation through deep breathing and humming and maybe some other things. Yes, I said humming. Some other things you've tried with your kiddo, your family, or your own stress. I'm telling you, we are so stressed, so locked into the perfect storm these days, it's not enough. And then also, if you haven't heard about vagus nerve stimulation and this conversation at all, my goodness, get ready to have your mind blown, because when you learn about this nerve, how ridiculously important, and I'm going to use the word, kind of another weird word to go with the weird word to kick this one off, and how potently and effectively this can dramatically improve our health, well, this episode could change so much for you, your kids, and your family, especially if you feel like when it comes to your kiddo's chronic disease, chronic struggles, and illness, you've tried everything in the conventional medical world and everything maybe even in the natural and holistic medical world. Well, now, as we do with every episode here on the Experience Miracles podcast, no one talks about the nervous system and how to create neurological healing for our kids and for our families like we do on this one. Sadly, today, our country and our families are overwhelmed by chronic illness and disease. And I really wish that I could say that really only is talking about our older population and adults, even though that itself is frustrating and not the way of life it should be for any of us of any age. But our kids are suffering big time. The latest statistics from the CDC show that over 40% of school-age kids currently struggle with at least one chronic health condition. And as you'll learn here on this episode, talking all about stimulating the vagus nerve and how to access one of the most overlooked but highly effective healing mechanisms the body needs so badly right now, more kids who are sick are actually struggling with multiple chronic conditions today. Take autism, for example. Autism is not a neurological condition where kids just struggle to communicate, socialize, and control their emotions. The majority of children struggling with autism also have chronic gut issues, immune system dysregulation, systemic inflammation, and all sorts of sensory and motor challenges. Chronic illness is a very big deal for all of us, but unfortunately, it's also very big business. Thankfully, more and more people from Joe Rogan to RFK Jr. have been calling out the truth that us pediatric chiropractors and natural health folks have known for a long, long time, that there is no patient worth more financial gain to the medical system than a chronically sick kid. There it is. I said it. This may seem like a sidebar conversation, before we get into vagus nerve stimulation and how to help your child heal with drug-free options from chronic illness. But it's important to know why we have so much chronic illness and such a need for all this in the first place. The best example I can give you as to how this system works is the overuse and misuse of antibiotics, something we've covered in detail here in the podcast on episode, I think, number 11, with our incredible holistic nurse practitioner, Jessica, helping you learn how to fight illness for your kids and family without these dangerous overused antibiotics. But we now know that every time kids under the age of 3, and especially under the age of 1, are given antibiotics, it increases their risk of chronic illness and autoimmune conditions like asthma and allergies later in life significantly. So not only is the industry profiting off that 5 to 10 day medication that is given unnecessarily, since most respiratory infections are viral and resolve on their own, but it actually helps ensure that your child will become chronically sick as they get in and destroy the gut and microbiome further. And now they will have a lifelong customer instead of just a 10-day customer. Sounds harsh. It is. It's true. Conventional and supposed modern medicine is not only woefully outdated and unscientific in so much of what they do and say, but they are full-on for-profit industry, one of the largest, if not the largest, and that is also tied in with another huge industry, the Cheez-Its, Doritos, Rockstar Energy Drink, and candy bar industry. Yep, when this podcast drops, we are coming up on Halloween, winter, and holiday season. And if you're on my team or inside PwC these last 17 years, then you know if you would ask, hey, Dr. Tony, what is your least favorite holiday? You don't even have to get done asking the question, and I will answer unequivocally, quite passionately, Halloween. So as we shift into fall and winter, there is no such thing as cold and flu season, as the media and medical machine will tell us. There is go inside, no more vitamin D, no more fresh air, no more exercise, and house pumpkin spice lattes and candy from multiple nonstop holiday parties at school, at sports, and everywhere else. So we go from a Halloween party to a Thanksgiving party to Christmas cookies loaded with red dye number 40 refined sugar. And then we wonder why our kids' behavior and their immune system, not us, of course, not listening to this. We are the weirdos, aka people who have healthy kiddos who send in our own chemical chemical-free and organic snacks. And actually, in today's world, I got to kind of sneak this in there. It is awesome. I've been a parent for 17 years by the time this drops. Same time as I've been a pediatric chiropractor. And I'm telling you, I'm doing this in kind of my style this way, but I absolutely despise Halloween. I also despise Halloween because I am a sensory kid. A much grown, well-adjusted, my vagus nerve, which we're about to start talking about here in a second once I get done with my Halloween rant. My vagus nerve is humming, everybody, okay? And you'll see that that's a pun-intended joke also there. And so I can handle all sorts of different stressors in my life that I couldn't handle as a kid. But who wants to wear an uncomfortable, ridiculously weird Halloween costume whilst, another fun word to drop into the podcast, housing chemicals and sugar all day long? And which of us thinks that our kids are going to sit down, behave, and not get sick during that season? So yeah, I could just go ahead and get done with Halloween forever. But I actually love Thanksgiving because gratitude, chilling with family, watching football, not having to worry about all these presents and all this gifting, we're doing what is it called? A blind gift bag thing? Oh, everybody's going to Hobby Lobby and, buying crap for each other that nobody wants or needs. I mean, come on, people. Let's just do Thanksgiving in October. Let's do Thanksgiving in November. Let's do Thanksgiving. No, kid, that's not good. We definitely need to celebrate the birth of our Savior in December. But can we skip the parties and the lame gifts? Let's just go after it. Okay. So now, like usual, on this podcast, you get at least one kind of rando dad, Dr. Tony stories / complaints / sarcasm / I bet a lot of you relate to that. Remind me sometime on an episode here as you get to know me. Maybe this is your first one. And maybe right now you're done listening and I'll never, just kidding. Hopefully stay with me. We're going to get back into the science. But remind me on a certain episode, I'll have to find the right one to line this up with to tell you all about my fear of birds and the fact that while Halloween is the worst holiday ever, birds are an animal that I really wish God just had not created because we could definitely deal without those evil creatures. But I'll explain that one another day. I've already explained Halloween. There is no cold and flu season, but there is chronically sick kids, okay? And the reason that they get more chronically sick and struggling even more with their immune system, struggling with their behavior, struggling with their emotions, and struggling with everything in the fall and winter is not because there's more viruses and more bacteria. It's because there's more stress, more pressure from school, sports, and staying inside, and there's less being outside. There's less vitamin D. There's less healthy food. And so that's the perfect storm. We have too much stress and too little ability to adapt to it and get through it. And that's where the vagus nerve comes in. The vagus nerve is the most important nerve in the body because it doesn't just control our rest and our relaxation and our digestion. The vagus nerve actually controls our response to stress. The vagus nerve controls our response to illness. The vagus nerve controls our response to trauma. So high stress pregnancies, birth trauma, things that we talk about all the time on this podcast and will again here in a couple of minutes with this vagus nerve stimulation episode. The vagus nerve is in charge of bounce back. The vagus nerve is in charge of recovery. And y'all, in today's world, we need our vagus nerve and we need our parasympathetic rest, relaxation, regulation, digestion, anti-inflammatory, emotional, behavioral, social regulation, and responsiveness, bounce back, recovery, and healing nerve more than ever before. So if you get online and you search about the vagus nerve, you're going to hear that nice little cute 2-word nickname or 3 words with and in between. Oh, the vagus nerve, it's the rest and digest nerve. Yeah, that's what we thought it was 20 to 30 years ago, but the research is fully out on the vagus nerve now. That's why we're going to get into vagus nerve stimulation, because when it's this important, this impactful to every system and everything in the body, and unfortunately, every day in my practice, I take care of kiddos who are struggling with everything. They can't sleep, they can't digest, they can't try new foods, they have immune systems that are completely destroyed and shut down and multiple antibiotics and dysregulated. They have chronic systemic inflammation throughout their body, throughout their brain, throughout their nervous system. Their emotions, their behavior, their speech, their socialization is a mess. And the answer and the access point to all of that getting better is the vagus nerve. So that is actually our intro spun with a very fun Halloween rant. Okay, so those of you that, if you're listening or watching some clips of this on YouTube, just go ahead and give me a comment if you're, in the let's skip and never do Halloween again camp. I just want to bring that. I just want to see how many voters I have on that. Might be just a few of you. And I'm probably going to get a lot more comments of people who love Halloween and pumpkin spice lattes. But let's think about it for the health of our kids here. All right. Now, in a minute, I'm going to go backwards for a second, and I'm going to slow down and very much teach you what the vagus nerve is and what the vagus nerve does. But I just want to talk about vagus nerve stimulation from a 30,000-foot view and kind of a contrast view here for a second first. Because if you've heard about vagus nerve stimulation, then you've likely heard about it in one of 2 camps, the way I'm going to describe this. The first camp is the low-dose vagus nerve stimulation. Now, this stuff that I'm about to list, I am the biggest fan of. You're just going to see, I'm just going to say it, kind of cart before the horse here on this episode. It's just not enough. This stuff is not enough to spark and create actual definitely full healing and recovery for kids who are struggling with anxiety and autism and epilepsy. But you've probably heard about vagus nerve stimulation in the very natural, holistic, healthy kind of wellness world. So if you've read a blog about vagus nerve stimulation and nervous system stuff on Instagram, online, you've probably read this list of things that stimulate the vagus nerve, like music, like singing, humming. You've probably read that being social and laughing with friends stimulates your vagus nerve. You've probably read that going outside in nature, especially, and walking and exercising and movement. We're going to talk a lot about movement, proprioception, vagus nerve stimulation in a big way when we get in there. But you've kind of heard this list of, I'm going to call them pretty obvious things that stimulate the vagus nerve. Now, hear me on this one. Stimulate the vagus nerve is something you've maybe only heard a little bit about or never heard about. It actually means reduce stress. So the reason we're having this conversation is stimulating the vagus nerve is the body's way of turning off our sympathetic fight or flight stress side of the nervous system. So we all know without much thinking, right? We don't really need a podcast, don't really need a blog to know that when we're stressed, if you go outside, go for a walk and laugh with friends and get around people you love, that's going to be a good thing. Okay. Now, these holistic hippie blogs, they take it a little bit bit further, and they're like, you could also gargle with salt water. You could hum some tunes. Dr. Andrew Huberman actually talks all about the vagus nerve, and there's even devices in the world. So that's the other side of this I want to go to. Now, because vagus nerve stimulation, awesome, by the way, big fan of this, big fan of you, Dr. Huberman, as well. It's trending. It is trendy. It's all over TikTok. It's all over Instagram. It's all over other blogs. And so now, which is good, I suppose, certain companies have picked up on this. So you can buy devices, download an app with your phone, hook it up to your ear, hook it up to your tongue, hook it up to your head, because that's where the brain is. There's just a bunch of bones in between. We're going to talk about some of the details on that. And there are supposed vagus nerve stimulators out there in the world. We'll call them medical devices. There's actually been one that is surgically implanted in kids with intractable epilepsy, meaning they've tried every medication on the epilepsy market and they haven't worked. So one of the last resorts in the medical neurology world is vagus nerve stimulators, which work exactly like a pacemaker. So they're surgically implanted in, because the vagus nerve, you'll learn in a minute, is the wandering nerve. It comes from the brainstem, goes down through the neck and into the thorax. Now, the thoracic cavity is kind of like from your collarbone and your shoulders down through your ribs and down to your diaphragm and down to your lower gut. So the midsection. And the vagus nerve, these vagus nerve stimulators, my specialty is in epilepsy and seizures. I've probably seen more seizure patients than any chiropractor, probably ever. And that's weird to say, but it's in my head right now, and I'm talking out loud, so I'll just finish saying it. We have probably seen more epilepsy. I can't think of any other chiropractor in history, and especially right now, that has seen more epilepsy patients than us. So I have seen hundreds of patients who have vagal nerve stimulators that were surgically implanted. Now, this I need you to hear, especially if you are a parent of an epilepsy and seizure kiddo or listening yourself as a patient. I've seen hundreds of patients with vagal nerve stimulators, and I've only had one or two of them out of those hundreds that by the time they got to our clinic, it was still turned on and they're still using it. Now, what the heck does that mean? It means it's an outside-in intervention. So vagal nerve stimulators is about as close as medical neurologists and conventional medicine is going to get to actually getting to the root cause. Like, they're using the right words and they're barking up the right tree. But what happens is when you artificially, so a vagal nerve stimulator is just hooked up to basically like a BlackBerry and a device. And when a seizure patient has stress and aura, a lot of seizure patients have like an aura. They have some tells or some signs of when a seizure is coming, just like a migraine. In fact, the neurology of a migraine and a seizure are pretty close cousins. So that's why these things are there. And they are then instructed to activate through this electronic device, these electrodes implanted in their vagus nerve. And it sends what's called a sensory afferent. Afferent means incoming signal to the vagus nerve. And it's supposed to try and decrease the sympathetic stress response and calm and regulate the nervous system and try and hold off seizures. Now, the reason I say that the hundreds of patients I have in our clinic, even active right now, who have them surgically implanted, they never come out, unfortunately, is they're not working anymore, is because like medication, which they're using the vagus nerve stimulator as a last resort for medication, the body becomes immune to it. It becomes less effective. A lot of times when I dig into the case history with these families, that vagus nerve stimulator was quite effective in the initial stages, just like the 6, 8, 15 different medications they had tried before. It's always, not always, definitely not always, but a lot of times it's good symptomatically for a little bit and then it fades. That's the body's neurophysiology. That is where something medicine can never explain this, but chiropractic can. And it's not even complicated, moms and dads. The body becomes immune to anything. It adapts to anything. The more you drink, the more you need to drink in order to feel the same response. The more someone exercises, let me go to a good one, a good analogy instead of drinking or cigarettes, the more someone exercises, like for me, it's annoying if I keep going to CrossFit, if I kind of get in a regular rhythm, because then I get in better shape and then I'm supposed to go harder and work out more because I'm in better shape. So you can do more, right? You become immune to the easier exercise and ready for the higher dose of exercise. And so I wanted to go into that, and I'm pretty sure about 8 minutes minutes ago, I said that I would spend 1 minute talking about these two different kind of groupings of vagus nerve stimulation. But y'all, if you've tried to get your kiddo with anxiety to do deep breathing exercises, take deep breaths, and I'm going to minimize this. I'm not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist, but I've talked to parents all the time and they go, we've freaking tried every study or every therapy, every recommendation of deep breathing, breathe through your belly. You know, sometimes even psychiatrists and psychologists will talk about the vagus nerve. They should. That's absolutely what happens if you can take a deep breath. But so many kids in our clinic and so many even moms and dads, they're so buried by stress, subluxation, sympathetic dominance, that it's a good idea cognitively, consciously, they can think about taking the deep breath and that being a good thing. But they are literally trapped in the sympathetic storm. They are literally so fight or flight that those kids can't take a deep breath. They can't do the good things, even though they know they're good things for them. And then those that have had the surgical or medical devices, let me just say this. The devices out there on the market that talk about stimulating the vagus nerve, we're going to get into how to actually stimulate your vagus nerve here as the back end of this episode, but they just are awesomely marketed, very scientifically, low dose, right? Big promise, low delivery. And so what we're going to get into is exactly the science of how neurologically focused adjustments, chiropractic adjustments. Now, this isn't your regular chiropractic. This isn't every kind of chiropractic. This is a very specific kind of chiropractic that knows how to address sympathetic dominance, dysautonomia, subluxation, which is vagus nerve suppression. So if you've listened to previous episodes, I'm going to go through it again here really briefly today, the science on this, but what our kids struggling with chronic health are dealing with, it's not just genetic, and it's not just gluten, and it's not just a disrupted microbiome and pro-inflammatory immune system. It is a dysregulated, out of balance, dysautonomic nervous system. Now, the vagus nerve is the number one player of nervous system regulation, and it's not even close. We would all be stuck in a sympathetic fight or flight storm if we didn't have a vagus nerve. So what it is, again, we mentioned it earlier, it's called the wandering nerve, and it goes down. It's called that because it's actually the longest cranial nerve, and it's one of the, I think it's technically, not that this matters, but sometimes, when people don't like chiropractors and you say something on Facebook, then it matters to these people. They are it's disheartening to know that certain things matter to them, but those people in the comment stream, right? So it's the second longest nerve, I think, and it's nicknamed the wandering nerve because of this. It branches from the brainstem. I know we're on a podcast, so you can't see me, but imagine I'm pointing to the base of my skull and my upper neck. The most sensitive, important part of the body, and it's not even close, is the upper neck, what's called the upper cervical, if you're using kind of chiro lingo, and the brainstem area. So the vagus nerve is one of 12 cranial nerves, and all cranial nerves and all spinal nerves come in pairs because there's 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 lungs, right? Everything is pretty symmetrical and bilateral in the body. And so the way God designed us is from each side of the brainstem and each side of the spinal cord and neurospinal system, these nerves branch out, and it's the same nerve roots they control. So it's called a nerve root. The vagus it's 85 to 90% sensory, meaning it's really a big receptor nerve. It's a big reporter nerve. It goes out from the brainstem down through the neck into the thorax as low as the diaphragm and the gut. It's very, very, very much innervated is the word, and really connected to the gut, to the lungs, to the heart, to our thymus, to our immune system, and so much more. So the vagus nerve is a sensory nerve. 85 to 90% of its nerves inside the vagus are sensory. So it's in charge of reporting to the brainstem and to the brain what's going on in the body. Now, the vagus nerve also has sensory branches that goes to our eyes, and goes to our ears, and goes to our tongue, and goes to our throat and our vocal cords. So if you have a child with speech delays and sensory, social, emotional challenges, put those all together, you kind of most likely end up with a diagnosis of autism. And the more of those things and the more severe they are, you go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, nonverbal. The vagus nerve is involved in every single component of autism. And I actually think when we talk about the vagus nerve and autism, it might be the easiest way to understand how essential the vagus nerve is, because kiddos with autism typically, the majority of them have significantly reduced digestive motility. Their gut is a mess, meaning the vagus nerve is offline because it controls digestive motility, absorption, and elimination. So many kiddos, the majority of kiddos with autism, have chronic inflammation, systemic inflammation. It even gets into their spinal cord, their CSF, and their brain. And we know that. And the vagus nerve connects to many organs, glands, of the immune system, and the vagus nerve, when stimulated, when active, when doing its job, will send anti-inflammatory signals throughout the body. It's essential to turning inflammation off. The vagus nerve goes to many of our muscles, not only for speech formation, but especially just muscles. And so many kiddos who have vagus nerve dysfunction and it's not working and it needs, so vagus nerve suppression needs vagus nerve stimulation. That's kind of like that'd be a catch-all term for this whole podcast episode. They struggle with motor planning, gross motor and fine motor and sensory challenges. The vagus nerve is a sensory nerve. So if your child has sensory processing challenges, sensory integration issues, sensory overwhelm, they have vagus nerve suppression and dysfunction guaranteed, okay? And the vagus nerve controls sleep. But the vagus nerve goes not only to those eyes and ears, but it goes to parts of our brain from a, again, sensory reporting system. And the vagus nerve controls our social, emotional, and cognitive development and regulation. So we've always known that the vagus nerve, like if you go to a medical website, you go on the Google, well, actually, if you go on the Google, and you don't have to call it the Google, but when you're in your 40s, you call it the Google, the Book of Face, and then people who are on your team make you use Instagram when you really wish you could just go back to MySpace or at least Facebook, okay? So anyways, on the Google, if you Google vagus nerve, hopefully you'll land on all sorts of articles from pxdocs.com, so the website that was kicked off before this podcast. So if you want to read written versions of every one of my podcasts, if you're like, geez, this guy and his Halloween and, anti-bird rants, does he have articles I could just read? We do. I would love for you to keep tuning the podcast, by the way. But if you are a reader, I am both. I learn via podcasts, videos, all the above, right? I love to learn. Anyways, if you Google this stuff, vagus nerve, you will find WebMD and Web Everybody, MD Everybody, stuck in the 1988, still driving a DeLorean and a Trans Am, and wearing a reversible starter jacket with jeans from the Buckle and Doc Martens. Actually, I think those made a comeback. So that I might have messed up my 80s analogy there with the Doc Martens. But if you go to their websites, they only talk about the vagus nerve for rest and digest. And they are so archaic and so outdated when it comes to the actual science of the vagus nerve. And there's a doctor, actually here in Chicago, Dr. Stephen Porges, who introduced what's called the polyvagal theory. Not going to go into that on this podcast episode, but we now know unequivocally the vagus nerve is our, yes, rest and digest, but it also regulates our emotions and our behavior and our focus and our concentration and our memory. So your kiddos struggling with autism, with ADHD, with learning disabilities, with dyslexia, with dyspraxia, with apraxia, with speech delays, with pandas, with Lyme's, with you name it, motor tics, OCD, ODD, this vagus nerve stimulation conversation is essential. And I mentioned this in my long introduction, but I want to just really highlight this for a second again before we switch gear and say, okay, now we know what the vagus nerve does. Now we know what the vagus nerve does. Now we know how important it is to get it back online when it goes offline from high-stress pregnancies, birth trauma, and toxins, because that's what shuts down the vagus nerve. That's a quick summary of the perfect storm, and I've done a bunch of episodes on that, so you can scroll up and listen to those. But I want to tap into this conversation about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, again, is in charge of our recovery. And life has stress in it, moms and dads, more than ever. The fertility journey, the pregnancy journey, the being a baby journey. Okay, even when I'm a dude, I always kind of make this joke, I'm a dude when I talk about labor and delivery and birth interventions and birth trauma. So I come from that perspective, studying it from a neuroscience perspective and a loving dad and caring provider perspective. But there is no walk in the park, even in the best of births, in a tub, at home, midwife, doula, incense burning, Bob Marley playing. I have checked babies, and the first thing we check for when we check babies from this kind of chiropractic perspective, is we check for the tone of their nervous system. And that's actually the last set of terminology I need you to understand with the vagus nerve, is that there's a tone to it. We can actually test for this. We can find this. And kiddos who have really had things go well, according to plan, if you will, with the birth plan, it's a stressful process to make your way from inside mom's caring, safe, loving womb out here into this crazy, pretty chaotic world. And so in this world that I know so many of you live, I live, and we're all trying to live there more better, which was not the more greatest English, but we're always trying to reduce our family stress, reduce toxicity, increase joy, increase health. And it's hard nowadays. And I don't like to have this conversation because I'm such a glasses half full guy. But right now, today, we are in the most stressful, sympathetic dominant world ever. So I'm on one here, but what our kids need now more than ever is to have their vagus nerve bussin', I think is how teenagers would say it, bumping, rolling, balling. That's how I grew up, okay? And so we have vagus nerves that are so suppressed, so shut down, so dysfunctional, and then we combine that with a high-stress, super toxic, ridiculously crazy, social media-fed world, and no wonder our kids are so sick. So the vagus nerve is in charge of recovery, which means the vagus nerve is in charge of healing. So hear me, feel me, please, moms and dads. If you've already done everything from a medical standpoint and it hasn't worked, if you've done everything from a natural, nutritional, microbiome-based standpoint and you've seen some good changes but not full recovery, and I know you're doing this, if you're loving on your kiddo and you're doing everything to regulate your nervous system when they have tantrums, when they have meltdowns, when they have seizures, when they are locked in with autism and you can't communicate with them, I know your nervous system is toast, but I know you're trying to download the Calm app. I know you're trying to regulate and stimulate your nervous system and vagus nerve. This is what we all need now more than ever to heal. This is a conversation, no matter how nerdy and wordy and weird vagus nerve stimulation sounds or looks when you see it written, it's everything to getting not just their gut and their immune system back online, but their communication, their socialization, their emotional regulation, and overall brain health. Okay, now let's shift gears and let's get into, you're like, wait a minute, you're just now getting into the title of the episode, Stimulating the Vagus Nerve. Actually, I never know when I record these if the title's actually going to say the title. We really work hard on the title to make sure it's something you want to listen to so I can teach you the stuff that I know will change your family's life. So when we talk about stimulating the vagus nerve, there's a very basic, and I probably should think of a different term because I'm always trying to help families without drugs and medication. And the word dosage or dose comes kind of with that context, but it works, right? It fits. So when you get on TikTok and you get on, Instagram and you learn about vagus nerve stimulation and nervous system regulation and just really, take it to the nth degree and you're like, I got it. I know what I need to do. We're going to move out of the suburbs. We're going to move out to a farm. We're going to pull our kids out of school. We're going to homeschool. We're going to get some chickens. We're going to get a cold plunge. We're going to build our own house. We're going to homestead, right? And we're going to sell that Suburban. We are buying a wooden wagon with some oxen to pull it. I was going to say carry it, but they pull it. They probably could carry it. And you're thinking, that'll do it. We will heal out there. Hear me, homies. We take care of everybody in our practice, and it is incredible. And trust me, I live on 20 acres with goats, chickens, donkeys, and the main reason that we love living out there is to get our kids outside and de-stress our nervous systems from this crazy world. So what I just said, jokingly, sarcastically, as is my nature and God made me, I love it. Big fan of it. It's not enough to create the first stage of healing that's stressed out, subluxated, overwhelmed, dysregulated, and most importantly, dysfunctional nervous systems need to heal. Deep breathing, goat yoga, walking in nature with classical music running, and grounding with your feet on the ground with your kids is awesome. Keep it up. It's good. It promotes health. It isn't potent enough to get a kiddo who's locked into autism, epilepsy, or anxiety out of it. And if it was, I would be singing its praises even more. Now, I'm using my sarcasm and my own experiences as contrast to say this. Neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments have direct access to the central, sensory, and autonomic nervous system, and most importantly, the vagus nerve. Because the vagus nerve wanders its way, remember we talked about its anatomy and its nickname before? The vagus nerve wanders its way from the cranial system through the brainstem, what's called the opening, called the foramen magnum, down through the cervical spine, which is called the neck for plain English, into the thoracic cavity, which is called the thoracics, and the dorsal neurospinal system. And the vagus nerve rides along the neurospinal system all the way through its journey. And it relies on, and it's entirely dependent upon neurospinal health, function, and communication. And what we talk about on this podcast all the time, and we have here, the perfect storm, high stress pregnancy, forceps, vacuum, C-section, where they grab a hold of the head, the cranial system, the neck of our babies whose bones are pliable, can't protect their own neck, can't control their own muscles. By the way, this would still be injurious, a yanking and twisting and pulling with vacuum, forceps, or a big set of hands from a surgeon via a C-section delivery or induction or cord wrap or decel, or all the different things that can lead to physical trauma and injury to the vagus nerve through the neck and the brainstem and the spine at birth. That's where vagus nerve suppression first sets up shop. Does a highly stressful emotional pregnancy decrease the development of the vagus nerve? Yes. I actually want you to go to the website and read all the research we have on the website, making my point. I know I'm over the top, and I'm a science guy who keeps it real simple and real straightforward instead of being real extra over the top nerdy and granular, so it doesn't make sense to you. But if you want the research, you want the nerd words, you want the citations, go to our website, pxdocs.com. Read the article, vagus nerve stimulation, read the article, vagus nerve dysfunction, read about birth trauma and the perfect storm. We now know that high stress pregnancies decrease the what's called fetal development of parasympathetic and vagal nerve tone. We can test mom's heart rate variability, which is the last thing I need to tell you about. We can find this. We can find out if your child's vagus nerve is suppressed and shut down. And then we know exactly which techniques and which adjustments, because the PX Docs Nervous System Focused Network is different than other regular chiropractors. Other chiropractors absolutely stimulate the nervous system. Just not everybody does it as a specialization and a focus and uses the technology we do to make sure it's getting done the way it needs to get done. I'll leave it at that. And so vagus nerve stimulation, nervous system regulation, and getting the nervous system balanced, functioning, I'll use my term from before for teens, getting that thing bussing and rolling again, that's the job. I can't believe I just said that. That is the job of a nervous system focused chiropractor. And so first, you have to find out if a child's vagus nerve is offline and dysfunctional. And we can do that. We're on the podcast, so I can't pop these on the screen right now because there is no screen for you listening as you're working out or driving or doing what you're doing. But we use what's called the insight scanning technology and insight scans in our offices. And these tests, there's 3 of them. I want to choose to talk about 2 of them in closing with this podcast episode. The thermal, because the vagus nerve controls digestion, inflammation, metabolism. So a lot of people are like, oh, seizures, it's a metabolic disruption. It's a neurometabolic disruption. And so that is where we can measure through these thermal scans, we can find out if the vagus nerve at this brainstem, cervical, and thoracic area, if it's dysfunctional, if it's subluxated. Subluxated is the chiropractic word that means interference. It's getting in the way of the vagus nerve properly communicating from the body, because remember, that's its job. 85% of its job is sending signals into the brain that says, hey, calm down, relax, regulate, focus, calm, make the transition, go to sleep, turn on the anti-inflammatory system, digest dinner. The vagus nerve has to tell the brain to do all that, and then the brain tells the body to do all that. So when the vagus nerve is offline, subluxated, interfered with, guess what the brain can't do? Is it a brain-based problem? Kind of, sort of. It's a vagus nerve problem first. So the vagus nerve does all those things. So when we find subluxation, and then we put together specific neurologically focused, what we call neurotonal adjusting protocols, they are 1,000% designed to stimulate the vagus nerve. And when chiropractic is done in this way, it is the most potent, direct, life-transforming method of vagus nerve stimulation out there. And again, I did it in my joking way before. Big fan of walking in nature. Big fan of socializing, laughing, and deep breathing. But what if your teen has been locked into anxiety for a decade or their whole life? and they don't go out and don't go to school and don't socialize and don't believe they can get better anymore? What if your child, your fight or flight, sympathetic, sensory overdrive, toddler, and first grader who gets in trouble all day, every day, behavior, can't sit still, can't keep their hands to themselves, can't stop? What if they literally can't take a deep breath for more than 0.2 nanoseconds? What if they're just stuck in fight or flight so deeply, so significantly that they need a higher dosage of vagus nerve stimulation? That's this kind of chiropractic. Nothing else out there gets into vagus nerve stimulation without drugs, and really in this conversation, without surgery and surgically implanted artificial devices into your child's neck, because subluxation creates that interference. And the adjustment stimulates what's called proprioception. So I promise this is the very last nerdy word of this episode. Not the last time you'll hear this word, because proprioception is a big part of this conversation. But specific neurologically focused chiropractic adjustments, we send in what's called sensory, really good, healthy, sensory, afferent, proprioceptive input into the brain. This is why when you do have a really, really stressful day and you're stuck in traffic, stuck on a plane, stuck at your desk, if you just go move, you're calmer. If you just go move, your digestion works better. If you just go move, your emotional regulation and your decision making is better. So chiropractic is a movement-based science. Now, these little adjustments, which when you watch kids get adjusted, it is the littlest, gentlest, easiest, quickest thing ever. It is so potent, though, neurologically, because the upper cervical spine and the whole spine as a whole, it controls more of this vagal nerve tone and proprioceptive tone into the brain than anything else. So everybody, well, babies, they don't tell us. It depends on their age. And they don't really say this. When moms get adjusted, it's like the stress literally, physically, and emotionally leaves their body and leaves their brain. When dads get adjusted, they have more energy. They have more excitement. They have more understanding. They have more empathy. When teenagers get adjusted, they have more confidence. They have more self-esteem. The anxiety starts to fade away and the goodness takes its place. When toddlers get adjusted, they can finally calm, listen, make those transitions, digest their food, go to sleep at night. I could go on and on. When we stimulate the vagus nerve through neurologically focused chiropractic for kiddos with autism, you start to see them unlock. You start to see them unwind and unravel. And because the vagus nerve is in charge of socialization and speech and communication. So now once their nervous system gets out of that sympathetic storm because of vagus nerve stimulation, so we don't do the job for the body, we just restart, respark, and become the catalyst for the body's vagus nerve, getting rid of that subluxation so that the vagus nerve and this proprioceptive input into the brain can do its job once again. So the number one thing I need you to move you forward in action with, if you haven't done this yet, get in to a PX doc office, get into a nervous system focused chiropractor and get these scans done. You've got to get these neurothermal and heart rate variability scans. Now, I'm going to send you a Googling. Actually, you don't even need to. Why would I tell you to do that? Go to the website. Go to www.pxdocs.com. It's linked everywhere that our podcasts and any kind of content comes out. Go to the website and learn more about vagus nerve stimulation, vagus nerve dysfunction, subluxation, dysautonomia, birth trauma, and then especially make your way over to the tab. Every article finishes with this link. So whatever article you find, I wrote them all, so I know, with the help of our amazing team, PJ and crew, shout out to the homies that help me take this work to the world, Dr. Morgan, Aaron, and everybody. You'll find a link everywhere on that website to the Insight scans and to HRV. And if you already wear an Oura Ring, a Garmin or a Whoop, you know about HRV. And again, maybe you tune into this one because you're like, I can't get enough of learning about the vagus nerve, the autonomic nervous system, and nervous system simulation. And if you know about this, then you are up to speed on what I want to close with. The thing that is going to absolutely, positively, I am so confident of this, finally transform all of healthcare. First, we blamed genetics. And now the gig is up. That's not the cause of 99% plus of chronic illness in kids, in everyone. Second, we blame gluten. We blame dairy, our poor Wisconsin friends to the north. I'm in Northern Illinois. Sorry, friends up there. Sorry, cows, moo cows. They seem pretty sad at dairy anyways. But we blame gluten. We blame sugar. We blame toxins. We blamed everything. and that's not wrong either, there is a huge component of too many toxins and too many chemicals messing up our kids' health. But every day, all day, every day, now in practice, I meet families who live so flippin' awesomely healthy. They are fully living out in nature. They are completely gluten-free, casein-free, toxin-free, macro protein eating machines. And their kids are still stuck into autism, still stuck into anxiety, still stuck into this sympathetic storm. Because the real root cause of chronic illness in kids is neurological. It's not just genetics, and it's not just nutrition, and it's not just toxins. It is locked deeper than that into their nervous system. Their vagus nerve is shut down, suppressed, and in many chronic cases, completely offline altogether. When we see their HRV, we can actually measure the severity. We know what we're up against. So your kid gets a customized, personalized care plan for their nervous system. So that's the direction I'm sending you in. Every day, we're praying that we can reach you. Every day, we're working our butts off that we can reach you with these conversations. We need your help. If you haven't done it yet, will you please make sure you not only follow this podcast, but if you're on, I'm an Apple guy, hit the little arrow. Download this sucker. The more downloads we get, the more word gets out, and the more moms and the more kids and the more teens and the more people we can help. Please subscribe, download, share the heck out of this thing. Post on Instagram stories, put that link in here to this podcast, send it out to your homies. Please send it to your psychologist, your speech therapist, send it to everybody. Send it out there to your kid's teacher. And then the other thing we love, leave a review. If you review the show, that really, really, really helps. Maybe leave out the part about, my disdain for Halloween and birds and other random farmer stories and dad jokes. Maybe if you like them, maybe mention them in the review, and we can do that too. I just want to close this one with, obviously, take that action. Get into an office, get these scans. We're training PX offices. I know sometimes some of you are listening, you're like, I'm trying. You need to get over here. I'm coming to the UK next year. I'm coming to Australia next year, and I'm going to be teaching more other chiropractors. We're at about 1,000 strong. We need to be thousands all over the world. We're coming for you. We're coming for your kiddos. We're coming for your families. We'll train. If you have a chiropractor, if you are a chiropractor and you're listening to this and you're not yet a PX doctor, what are you waiting for? We need you on the directory. We need you using this technology and these clinical protocols. So come get certified with us. Reach out to us. You can send us a DM and get information on how to get trained and how to get certified in this work as well. We need you. Everyone, this is what our kids need. Moms and dads, here's what you need. Hope, answers, nerdy, neurological explanations like this, kept simple. And then you need those action steps to get results. Getting into the office, get the HRV, get the neurothermal, and then get your kiddos adjusted. Neurologically-Focused Chiropractic is the most powerful, incredible, life-transforming thing out there. And I'm the biggest fan of wellness. And I'm the biggest fan of good nutrition and exercise and living on a farm and all the things. But for so many families, so many kiddos have been so deeply set in and locked into the perfect storm, they need vagus nerve stimulation at its highest dosage. Not surgical, not medical, chiropractic.